Hello, my name is Stuart Tan. If you're new to this channel, please consider clicking on that subscribe button and on the bell notification icon so that we will be able to send you updates. Now, one of the things that happened recently was when I was on Facebook, I posted a question related to passion. Do people actually get stopped from pursuing their passion? And the reason why I asked that is because I seem to have quite a number of people who are apparently interested in pursuing coaching with me to be able to unleash their greatest versions of themselves. And I've seen it happen for people who are really committed to the cause and they're willing to put in the right level of effort and commitment in order to move themselves towards where they need to go. Unfortunately, there are some people who kind of balk at it, and I realize that no matter what we can say about their passion, something seems to be holding them back. And here's what I've discovered. Through the responses of the wisdom of the crowds, I began to notice that, yes, a lot of people attribute it to fear. The fear of not wanting to go into an area of discomfort. But more importantly, I've come to realize that there's one main philosophy behind passion, which a lot of people don't understand. And that really is about working on versus being in mindset of passion. What do I mean? So you have a passion. I'm just going to give you an analogy. Let's suppose you enjoy playing music. You listen to music, you love it, you enjoy it, you're immersed in it. And you say, I am passionate about music. And then you're told that you should take up lessons. And then the moment you have to take up lessons, it becomes such a conscious effort that it no longer is enjoyable. And unfortunately, at that point of time, there is a fork in the road. You can either pursue your path towards becoming a world-class musician or violinist, whatever, or you can just give up and say, that's not really my passion anymore because it's so difficult. So this is what I mean by the being in model, where when you're in it, how your emotions emerge out of it is what defines passion for you. However, if you go back in history and you take a look at the etymology of the word passion, it actually means suffering, from a root word in Latin. It basically means that something that you want to be passionate about is something that you'll end up being willing to suffer for. And while you may not be good at, let's say, the piano, and you start to have to take lessons and you need to learn all these notes, etc., the fact that you go through that, in spite of the inconvenience of the emotion, allows you to become a better human being, not because of the presence of bad emotions, but the presence of your ability to circumvent or to overcome or to become better than those negative emotions. Now, let's put it this way. If you simply go with what you feel based on an unfettered, unfiltered emotional state, then it must mean that every person you're attracted to, you have to kiss or hug. That's crazy. I mean, most people fantasize about that, but I don't think that's something that is going to be legally and morally or maybe even ethically possible. If you have the mindset that we're just going to go with that emotion, then perhaps you have mistaken the idea of what passion is. In my opinion, those people who focus in and lean into the concept of passion, they have what we call the working on model. It's not a fleeting sensation. It is a tribute to their passion, to their suffering. In other words, they'll go in, they'll know that it's hard work. But because they emerge out of that hard work better as a person, they end up feeling more connected to their craft, more connected to the working relationship they have with that passion. So let me give you the 7 core myths that a lot of people have actually stated. Number 1, that passion does not pay money. Well, it does not pay money simply because you are in the being in. You're just enjoying it. Whereas if you're working on, then you'll start looking for business models and ways to be able to cope with that. So this really does not apply. If you have the mindset that, oh, my passion doesn't pay any money, it simply means that you have a lazy approach to thinking about the passion. Take a look at Google, for example. They're offering massive amounts of value for free, and yet at the same time, you'll realize that they're attempting to monetize on something utilizing a freemium model, right? And they're finding different ways to build their business model so that it works. But what about you? Do you even understand about business modeling? If you don't, then perhaps it's time for you to get some coaching. Number 2, passion is unachievable, or people stop me, or they're in a comfort zone. Well, once again, this tells me that they are in the being in. In other words, they're letting their default emotions guide them rather than programming and defining the parameters by which their emotions ought to guide them, right? So, for example, passion is unachievable. Well, how do you know? Have you worked to the limits of your passion? If you don't know how to work to the limits of your passion, doesn't that mean you need coaching? And if you feel that you're overwhelmed or other people are stopping you, isn't that just an emotional state control mechanism? Isn't that a communication mechanism so that you can be influential enough to adjust people's ways of thinking, not just by talking to them, but by being a different person, showing them that their fears are unfounded, right? If you're in a comfort zone, that's primarily the basis of the use of your internal resource states so that you can move to where you need to go, isn't it? So if you don't know all of these basic elements, surely it's time for you to receive some kind of coaching. The third one, too busy to make a living. Oh, wow, that's funny, because if you're so busy making a living, it must mean that you've got some traction somewhere. So there are only two pathways. Number one, you're actually working on something that doesn't align with you, which is weird because you're already working on something and you're getting better at it because you're making a living in that area, compared with something that you're not really passionate about and you don't know how to monetize off of it. So I know for some people, they have a lower limit threshold on what they feel they can make a living off. So they end up maybe becoming an oil trader because they feel that doing diesel hedging, they feel that they can make more money. But when you're making a living in that area and you're not really passionate about it, it's just a way of making money, it doesn't necessarily pay the returns where you are growing. So you can continue to do 40 years of that kind of stuff. And then at the end of your 40th year, you wonder who you are because you have not used that work platform in order to improve yourself. You don't need to think about this, of course, right? Because you're probably younger. You're not in your 70s where your runway might be much shorter. But trust me, there are people who are in their 70s who realize that they still have a number of years left in them and they don't want to live with regrets. So the last thing you want to have is a moment of hell where you are on your deathbed and you're thinking about all the things you could have done and all the suffering that you could have unloaded and released, but you can't anymore because you've got 24 hours left. So you've got to remember that while you're busy making a living, and I know some people who are like that, they're so enamored by making money, but they don't understand what it takes to be able to save the money or to manage the money because of a huge amount of ego. Okay, so when you are making a living, but you're not really alive, is that truly making a living? Okay, so in my opinion, if you don't really know this and you're constantly doing things that you really don't like, but you're just sticking with it and you're blaming other people and basically bringing on suffering for yourself, well, isn't that something that you have to reconsider? I mean, there's obviously no upside to whatever it is that you're doing, but you don't know what else to do. And that's the conundrum. You're only taking on whatever it is that you've been given. And while that might be helpful under certain circumstances, you have yet to see how that platform can serve you, that employment platform, that job platform, that business platform, whatever it is. You have not seen how that can serve you. And as a result, it's important for you to take on some kind of coaching, some form of mentoring in order for you to notice the difference in that perspective. Number 4, initial obstacles and failures. Now, I cannot emphasize this more. Whenever you are experiencing an obstacle, you can either treat the obstacle as something in your way or treat the obstacle as the way. The difference is that if you have a belief that the obstacle is there against you, the mindset is one of confrontation, it's one of trying to remove the obstacle. But more often than not, I've realized that many obstacles, which are not really physical or material obstacles in people's lives, they're primarily mental and emotional obstacles in their life. If they have not seen how that obstacle is for them rather than against them, then it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get to where they need to go because they're just trying to sweep that obstacle or that failure or that mistake under the carpet without really reaping the returns of learning from that. So the only way you can do that is to elevate beyond your ego, elevate beyond your mindset or that emotional state of, oh no, this is a bad thing, and utilize a coach to be able to take some perspective on that. Number 5, they don't have passion. I don't believe that people don't have passion. I think that a lot of the time, over the years, you would have seen them becoming more and more dispassionate because they're rehearsing disengagement. For instance, when you're really young and you're a child, you usually have a lot of interest. You're exploring, you're discovering things. But over a period of time, that kind of like gets smacked out of you, either because of what society tells you or because you've got experiences that have sort of punished you. So when you say that you don't have passion, it's probably because you became dispassionate over a period of time. And as a result, disillusioned, disengaged, and you're literally suffering in something that isn't really worth suffering for. And if you don't pay attention in terms of your reflections and getting to know yourself over a course of time, then you're going to end up wasting the opportunities of the past. Many people whom I've met have suggested that, I can do it on my own. Well, if you can do it on your own, please, by all means, go ahead. Most of the time, however, that's like 5% of the population, right? Only some of you who actually have the capability, commitment, and the desire to really work on yourself and the tools to work on yourself are able to do that. But yet, there are always things that you don't have very much familiarity with, and you aren't able to bring to bear the appropriate resources, let alone taking a look at the problem in the right way or to take on a perspective in the right way. So this is one of the reasons why whenever you are thinking, look, if you're saying that it's just about reflection, okay, I'll just reflect upon it. But that's like running a marathon thinking that 24 hours running a marathon is a world-class benchmark, right? You don't know what the benchmark is because a trainer is going to train you by pushing you to your limits. The only way that a coach is able to see whether you're of Olympic standard or world-class standard is to literally, deliberately push you to your limits and then past your limits, right? So without being able to explore those limits, even if you might be fearful, without putting in the right kinds of resources, you will not know what that limit actually is. Next, most people treat passion as stress relief or as a hobby. True enough, that misunderstanding comes from a lack of studying about passion, right? So you've not really looked into what passion really means. Once you take a look at the Latin root, it denotes the idea that you may have to suffer in order to be able to arrive at an understanding of that passion. Did you put in a lot of effort? Did you spend years honing your craft? Did you make mistakes along the way? And if you didn't, then what's the point of having a passion? Because at the end of the day, passion is about a contrast effect. You are passionate because you suffered for it and therefore you reap the returns for it. If all the returns dropped on your lap, do you honestly think that you appreciate it? Everything does have a price. So the last one is contentment. Contentment, in my opinion, is just an emotional state. A lot of people think that contentment is a bad thing. I think contentment can be a good thing depending on how you look at it. In my opinion, I think contentment is the sensation of a derivation of satisfaction. Once you have derived satisfaction from something, it means that you have done something that makes it satisfying. Like, for example, have you ever noticed that people are usually not satisfied whenever they don't do anything? So contentment is when you go through a struggle and the struggle was worthwhile. You struggled for your marriage and that's why it was worthwhile. You struggled for that business and that's why it's worthwhile. And sometimes the more you struggle for it, the more worthwhile it becomes. The guy who's run one marathon may feel that their suffering is not worth it anymore. But then the person who's run 20 marathons feels like he's in love with it. Why? Maybe because you haven't run 20 marathons yet. So the idea behind this is that there's so many myths about passion that I think it's time for us to reinvestigate. If you're not really sure about what your passion is, click on the link down below. Let's have a conversation about your passions so that you at least get a sense of what it means to have a conversation surrounding your passion that makes you more engaged in life, brings you more sense of connection with a greater purpose in your life, rather than just doing the menial work. The last thing I want for any one of my subscribers or followers or friends here is to go through life ending up at a point in time where they have been overtaken by disengagement and disillusionment, and then they find some ridiculous way like suicide as a way out. Let's not go there. Instead, let's find ways to keep you directly engaged with life, get yourself connected with life so that essentially you will find that contentment is everywhere, that the ability for you to pursue any one of your passions is a God-given birthright for every single one of you. So go ahead, click on that link, fill up the form, and I will get back to you.